Now a look at the latest political stories from Holyrood and Westminster. It's Representing Border.
Good evening from Holyrood on tonight's Representing Border. Humza Yousaf's future as First Minister hanging by a thread.
Humza Yousaf's government is in crisis. It has unravelled.
The people of Scotland didn't vote for this mess and this chaos.
I think the future generations of Scotland have been betrayed.
The First Minister faces a vote of no confidence next week after his decision to pull the plug on his power-sharing deal with the Greens backfires.
It is in the best interests of the people of Scotland to pursue a different arrangement.
Now head of a minority government, will Humza Yousaf be able to hold on? A year ago he beat her for the leadership, now she holds his leadership in her hands. Alba's Ash Regan could have the casting vote. We have analysis and reaction from the Greens on what's been a seismic day in Scottish politics. Humza Yousaf's future as First Minister hangs in the balance this evening after the Scottish Greens joined other opposition parties in saying they'll vote against him in a motion of no confidence. The SNP leader dramatically brought the power-sharing deal with the party to an end this morning, sacking Patrick Harvie and Lorna Slater, who accused him of political cowardice. This afternoon, the co-leaders, who until today served in the government, announced they'll vote to finish Mr Yousaf's premiership.
The Scottish Green MSPs have decided that we will support a vote of no confidence in the First Minister.
We deeply regret that Humza Yousaf has brought this situation about by tearing up an agreement that was working well to achieve political cooperation, locking in a progressive pro-independence majority government. I think that had great value to him, to his party, to the Scottish Government and to Scotland.
Now, a no-confidence vote only needs a simple majority of MSPs to pass. It wouldn't force the First Minister to resign, but it would make his position untenable. As it stands, the Greens, along with the Tories, Labour and the Liberal Democrats, only need one more vote to win it. So it could all be down to Ash Regan. She's Humza Yousaf's former SNP leadership rival who quit the party over the Gender Recognition Reform Bill.
Well, I have written to, or I'm in the process of writing to Humza today, and in that letter I'm asking him to say how he's going to be progressing independence, how he intends to defend the rights of women and children, and also how he's going to return to competent government. So anything that I do next week will depend on what Humza's answers are to those issues.
Well, this morning the First Minister took to the podium to declare a fresh start for his government. By the end of the day, it looked uncertain he'd be the one leading it. So how did we get here? Hannah Brown has been following today's events.
Stripped of their ministerial titles first thing this morning, the scorned Scottish Greens returned to Holyrood.
We still be as cooperative with the Scottish Government when it comes to things like the budget going forward.
Do you think the current government will still be in place for the next budget?
Will you stay on as co-leaders?
That's another decision for another time.
Shortly afterwards, at Bute House, Humza Yousaf said he hoped they would still cooperate, just on a more informal arrangement.
The Bute House Agreement was intended to provide stability to the Scottish Government, and it has made possible a number of achievements, but it has served its purpose.
The First Minister's decision comes days after the Green Party announced they would vote on the future of the deal next month, following a backtrack on climate targets.
Do you feel that you're succumbing to pressure from the Greens here?
I've not been pushed. I'm still the First Minister of Scotland. I'm here. It's my decision.
Borders MSP Christine Graham welcomed that decision.
I think it's a good outcome, and I actually think it's a good outcome for both parties. There's no point remaining in a relationship that's become miserable and tense, whether it's a political relationship or a personal relationship, and that's what that had become.
At First Minister's questions this afternoon, Humza Yousaf was under pressure to quit and call an election.
Humza Yousaf's government is in crisis. It has unravelled. He He has abandoned...
First Minister.
I think the First Minister might be a bit tetchy today. I wonder why. He has abandoned the platform he stood on.
The people of Scotland didn't vote for this First Minister. The people of Scotland didn't vote for this mess and this chaos. So isn't it time to end the circus and call an election?
Who does the First Minister think he is pleased most today? Is it Douglas Ross, Fergus Ewing or Alex Salmond? And more to the point, which of them does he think he can rely on for a majority in Parliament now?
South of Scotland's only elected Green says he feels disappointed.
I think the Greens and the SNP together in government were bringing in some great policies. You know, they had the free bus travel for young people, peak rail fares abolished, you know, lots of record investment in climate.
I'm pretty angry at the decision taken by Humza Yousaf, to be honest. Not only has he treated the Green Party with contempt by overriding our democratic processes, he has treated the planet and the environment with contempt.
The Tories have called for a vote of no confidence in the First Minister.
Humza Yousaf is a lame duck First Minister, and the quicker we can remove him, the quicker we can get the focus back onto the real priorities of people across Scotland.
We believe the people of Scotland should decide, and we should have an election now.
So is that a support of the vote of no confidence?
Any motion that comes to this Parliament that states that it has no confidence in Humza Yousaf or this SNP government, we will support.
Has your government been destabilised?
A question Humza Yousaf will be asking himself as he reflects on the decision he made today.
Hannah Brown reporting. When it was first signed, it was historic. The first time the Greens were in government in the UK. Today, the deal brokered by Nicola Sturgeon was brought down by her successor, ending 2.5 years of cooperation at the top of Scottish politics. James Mahon looks back on what's not always been an easy partnership.
Well done. She'd won again, but without an overall majority for the SNP. Nicola Sturgeon turned to the other pro-independence party.
I am joined here today in Bute House by the co-leaders of the Scottish Green Party.
In August 2021, the two parties formed the Bute House Agreement, with the aim of bringing stability to Scotland during a period of pandemic.
Amazing day, wonderful, historic.
The Green co-leaders took on ministerial briefs and helped push through free bus travel for young people, temporary rent freezes and an increase of the child payment.
High quality early education and childcare is a perfect example of a policy that is both anti-poverty and pro-growth.
When Humza Yousaf took over as SNP leader, he stood by the deal. But within weeks, key Green policies were on the rocks. Ministers canned the deposit return scheme, ditched highly protected marine areas, and splits appeared within the SNP ranks.
This is what to do with it, Presiding Officer. This is what to do with it. I do it now. That is what the people of Scotland, who have great affection for our fishermen, want to happen and what should happen.
More strain came between the parties in recent months over the block of the Gender Recognition Reform Bill and a review into transgender healthcare. Green members have been preparing to vote on the future of the Bute House Agreement after ministers scrapped the 2030 emissions target last week. Today, the power has been taken out of their hands.
James Mahon. Now, for more on the Scottish Greens reaction, I spoke to co-leader Lorna Slater. You've just announced you'll be voting against Humza Yousaf when the vote of no confidence comes next week. When you woke up this morning, did you have any inclination that this is how the day would end?
I did not have any hint that this is how the day would end this morning, although I got the message to come to Bute House at nearly 9 o'clock last night. So I clearly knew that something was up and that today would be an unusual day.
When did you find out you were going to be fired? Was that when you arrived at Bute House?
Yes, that's right. Patrick and myself arrived at Bute House this morning, and the First Minister almost immediately, sat us down and said that he had made the decision to end the Bute House agreement. He couldn't see a way forward to it.
And when he gave his statement to the press at Bute House, he said he was hopeful that the Greens would continue to cooperate to support the SNP government. Was your immediate feeling that that wasn't going to be the case?
Well, the Scottish Greens have been the consistent partner here. We have always worked to deliver progressive politics in Scotland, and that Butte House agreement that had that 50 pages of policy, that's what we've been working to deliver. Now, we will continue to work to deliver for climate, for nature, for tenants' rights, for equalities, for trans people, but it remains to be seen what the SNP will bring to the chamber.
Do you accept, your party were going to vote on whether to remain in the Butte House agreement? Do you accept that you've played a role, you've put Humza Yousaf in a difficult position when it comes to continuing that?
The Scottish Green Party is a democratic grassroots party, and it is for our members to determine really important decisions like staying in cooperation agreements. And it's right that our members asked for that time and space to have that debate. Our members are enthusiastic, but they are volunteers all over the country, people who have jobs and lives and families and caring responsibilities, and they need time to understand the politics and to have that lively debate, and it's right that they should do so.
You're clearly angry with Humza Yousaf. The language you've used there about it being his decision. Is this about revenge?
Absolutely not. It was the First Minister's decision to end a pro-independence majority government that had been up till now committed to progressive politics, to progressing equalities, to looking after the natural environment, to improving recycling, to doing all these good things. And he decided to stop that. The Scottish Greens will continue to fight for those things.
And now, because of your decision, the government is potentially in chaos. Is chaos a good thing for the people of Scotland?
The Scottish Greens, for nearly 3 years, participated in a stable government that had a clear vision for a progressive, fairer, greener and independent Scotland.
And now you're siding with the Tories.
The First Minister ended that progressive agreement. So the Scottish Greens will continue to push for our vision of a fairer and greener and independent Scotland. Who knows what the SNP will do now that the First Minister has given up on progressive politics and given in to the conservative right wing of his party.
Do you think Humza Yousaf will still be here at the end of next week?
That is for the Parliament to decide should that vote be brought to chamber.
Could you foresee anybody that could take over from him if he does leave that the Greens could work with within the SNP? Could you ever work together again after this?
It depends what you mean by work together. I mean, a cooperation agreement of the kind that we developed took months and years of trust to build, which is now gone. On a case-by-case basis, depending on each individual vote. But now that if the SNP are going to continue as a minority government, they are going to have to persuade someone to vote with them on every single vote. Now, they may be able to persuade us on a case-by-case, but they will be chasing Tory votes. They will be chasing Unionist Party votes. If that's how they've chosen to govern, they've made their bed there.
Lorna Slater, thank you. For analysis on what's been a very long day here at Holyrood, I spoke to Rachel Amery, the Scotsman's political correspondent, and Gina Davidson, LBC's Scotland political editor. Rachel Amery, Gina Davidson, it's been a chaotic day here, there's no doubt about it. Gina, where does the First Minister stand tonight?
Yes, as chaotic as the last one, which was last Thursday, of course. It's only a week since we've had those climate change targets ditched and the arrest and charging of Peter Murrell. So it's been a really chaotic day again in Holyrood. And the First Minister tonight must be wondering if he's really done the right thing in deciding to terminate this Butte House agreement with the Scottish Greens. Now, there have been pressure from within the SNP for him to do just that. He seems to have succumbed to that, but now, of course, he's facing a vote of no confidence in his leadership as First Minister of the government next week. And at the minute, the way the numbers are stacking up, it looks like he could potentially lose that vote. And even if they war-gamed it to that extent, I don't think he was really be expecting that to be the outcome when he got up this morning.
Rachel, where do you feel he stands tonight?
It's not a comfortable position for him at all, is it? So he's now potentially going to see this vote next week. We're expecting it to happen on Wednesday. It needs to have 2 sitting days' notice, so that'll be Wednesday that we'll get the vote there. But as Gina was saying, I mean, it's now potentially down to the Alba party here, who has one MSP with Ash Regan. And Ash Regan was Humza Yousaf's rival for SNP leadership only a year ago. And now we're looking at her potentially being the sort of the kingmaker here in all of this. She gets to maybe decide the vote as to what's going to happen here.
Yeah, Gina, he is in that position, as Rachel has said, where his SNP leadership rival will potentially hold the casting vote in a vote of no confidence. Where what does that mean?
Well, absolutely nobody would have foreseen that a year ago. But I think what it does say is, you should really be nice to people as you're climbing the ladder, because at some point you might come down and you might need to rely on them. You'll remember when Ash Regan left the SNP to join the Alba Party, he said that she was no loss to the SNP. He wasn't very nice about her. And of course now she is holding all the cards, or at least that's the way it looks. And now she might make some demands from him. She might want certain things to happen for her vote in this vote of no confidence. We'll see if he is able to agree to any of those, whatever they might be. But of course, going forward from here, even if she supports him in this particular vote and he manages to cling on, this will have to happen every time there's a division where the SNP government might lose a vote. So really, as I say, all the cards seem to be in Ash Regan's hands at the moment, and it's a huge irony for Humza Yousaf.
Yeah, well, let's rewind a little bit back. So this all kicked off first thing this morning, and he ditched the Butte House agreement with the Greens. Could he have foreseen this? Should he have foreseen this, Rachel?
Well, presumably he hasn't foreseen this, otherwise he would not have made this decision. I don't think he was expecting the Greens to be quite so sour about getting kicked out. I don't think he was expecting the no confidence motion to come either during FMQs. So I think the actions that have happened today, I don't think that could have been foreseen, because surely he wouldn't have taken this decision there. So it's really now going to be a case of how does he make this better now for the SNP? How does he cling on to the position of power that he has just now? Because it is looking a little bit shaky now.
What do you make of that? I mean, did he know this morning when he cancelled the Butte House agreement that it could cause all these things to move into place? He knew he would have a minority government, a minority vote in the Scottish Parliament.
I wonder if he was quite prepared for the fury that it's triggered within the Scottish Greens here at Holyrood. I mean, obviously they were expecting to have a vote with their membership about the Butte House agreement in about 4 weeks' time. Now, the members were really angry about those climate change targets and various other things, but over the course of a month, that might have calmed down, and the leadership here might have convinced them to remain in the Butte House agreement, that it was better to be in government than outside of it if they wanted to achieve things. That rug has been pulled from under their feet today. The decision is no longer theirs to make. Humza Yousaf might think he's lanced a boil before it burst and was worse for him, but at the same time, I think now that the fact that he's going to have to face this vote of no confidence just a year or so on from being elected SNP leader and First Minister, there is no way, as Rachel says, that they could have been expecting it to happen today and to be as close as it's likely to be.
Is there lessons to be learned here about how to handle? I mean, when he gave his announcement, he said he hoped that they would continue to cooperate just informally, and within minutes of him saying that, the Greens were in here, basically saying he wasn't trustworthy and that they'd been betrayed. What can he take away from this?
Well, I think a lot of the things here have been the communication we hear. He was saying earlier to journalists that Humza Yousaf said that he had been thinking about this for quite a long time, been mulling over in his head and trying to speak to as many people as he could about this. So considering he's been thinking about it for so long, I think a lot of questions are now is, why was it today? Why wait until now to make this decision? I think there'll be some people thinking that maybe this decision should be made a few days ago, maybe even a few weeks ago, given the anger that has happened in the SNP backbenches here. I think there has been a lot of lessons that could be learned on here back, and I think, as Gina was saying, keeping people on board and keeping people happy, not just when it's a crisis point at all times, because that then is when you're going to have to rely on them for these really important votes here.
Is that a question about the timing of all this and why that decision to cancel the Butte House agreement was made today? We know that there has been parts of within the SNP people who have not liked this deal. Do you think that there was mounting pressure? Is there a reason it was now?
I think so, yes. I think we've had more rebellions from the SNP backbenches than has ever happened in the history of the party here at Holyrood. I think if you look at the Westminster group, I think a lot of them have been deeply unhappy about the relationship with the Scottish Greens, particularly maybe those who have seats in the northeast of Scotland, where they're really going to be up against it at the general election whenever it is called, and they'll be feeling that link with the Scottish Greens around oil and gas issues, for instance, would have been damaging to them. And I think it's been interesting to hear Stephen Flynn today say that this is a good day for Scotland, that this decision has been made by Humza Yousaf. So I think absolutely pressure has been applied internally from the SNP and from probably indeed from Stephen Flynn himself.
And Rachel, what happens next then? You know, is this potentially game over for Humza Yousaf?
So 2 sitting days, we need to wait for a vote, so we're expecting that vote to happen on Wednesday. Now, if this does go against Humza Yousaf and he does get a vote of no confidence against him, there's not actually an obligation for him to leave. It's now up to him as to what he chooses to do. Of course, without the support of Parliament behind him, that's going to be very difficult for him to stay, but he doesn't have to go. It's different if it was a government no confidence vote, then they'd be forced to resign. This isn't the same thing, so it really does depend on what decision he makes, but I can't see him staying on if he hasn't got the support of the whole Parliament behind him.
Is that your feeling, Gina?
Yeah, it's a pretty untenable position to have the Parliament vote against you in terms of any confidence that they might have in you to lead the government. And of course, he still has, a couple of years until the next Holyrood elections, and you have to think about the policy agenda he is trying to set and the legislation he wants to get through. Would any of that be possible after a vote of no confidence in you as the First Minister? I think that's highly unlikely. So I think it could well be the case that if he doesn't get Ash Regan's vote, he might well have to go, and that might be as soon as next week, and we could end up with the SNP group here electing somebody else to be First Minister.
And more broadly, if he does have to go, what could it mean for the Scottish Government?
Well, that's what we don't know at the moment. So I think if he does have to go, they would have 28 days to elect somebody else to take his place. And if that doesn't happen, then we get into all kinds of difficulties as to how tenable the government is. As to who that would be, though, I'm not too sure. I mean, who could it be? Because they've obviously got Shona Robinson, the Deputy First Minister. Would she step up? Would you look at somebody like Kate Forbes, who stood against him last year to be First Minister? There's all kinds of paths you could open up at that point there as to what happens.
Yeah, I mean, how serious is this for the Scottish Government, not just for Humza Yousaf?
Yeah, it's hugely serious. If Humza Yousaf tries to stay on, if he loses that vote, then he will be very much a lame duck for First Minister. So therefore they will need to replace him. And if they look at who they've got there are some ministers or cabinet secretaries who are still quite new and raw in those positions. I mean, they might look to someone like Neil Gray, who's obviously already had 2 jobs since Humza Yousaf became First Minister, current Health Secretary, but he's very much seen as a safe pair of hands, and it seems to be well liked across all sections of the SNP, so they could turn to someone like him. But I think what we have to remember, of course, is he might become First Minister here, but not necessarily SNP leader. Humza Yousaf would remain that, and there would have to be a vote within the SNP itself to remove him from that position. So, I mean, we get into waters that we've never needed to go into before. So it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out.
Yeah, a lot more drama to come then. Gina Davidson, Rachel Amery, thank you very much. That's all from us for tonight, and indeed for this week. We'll be back on Tuesday. I hope you can join us then, but for now, thanks for watching and good night.